Hey friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome if you are new. If it's your first time visiting me, my name is Courtney. I am a stay-at-home homeschooling mom, and on my channel, I like to focus on food and kitchen content. I do weekly grocery hauls, I do what's for dinner videos every Saturday, and I sprinkle in some other kitchen content throughout the week sometimes, and this is one of those videos. If you saw the thumbnail, then you know I'm starting something new. This is my canning journey, and I'm gonna bring you guys along. Canning is something that I have wanted to learn how to do for a long time. In fact, during 2020, when everyone was stuck at home, I thought, oh, this would be a great time to learn how to can. But apparently everyone else thought that as well, and they bought up all the jars and all the stuff. So I did not end up learning then. Now that I'm in this house and I'm homeschooling my kids, I feel like it's a great time to spend a little bit more time in the kitchen because I can teach my children as well. Plus, I've become a lot more aware about things that are in my food. One of my kids has a lot of food sensitivity, so I really do pay a lot more attention to labels. So I've kind of got a little bit more interest in, I don't know, cooking more things from scratch and stuff like that. So maybe getting a little more away from the canned goods at the store and canning some of my own produce would be super handy. Plus, it's a great way, I don't garden, but I buy things when they're on sale. So like during the summer when the corn is on sale, like 8 ears of corn for $1, it's a great time to snatch it up and can it so I have that beautiful fresh corn all year round on my pantry shelf. Anyway, I'm starting with something simple. I'm gonna water bath can some berries. My next endeavor will probably be pressure canning, so stay tuned for that. I am not an expert. This is my first time canning anything. Mistakes were made and remedied, so tag along with me. Be kind in the comments, please. This is my first time and I am learning, but I'm so glad you guys are joining me here. And let's just go ahead and dive right on in. All right, guys, so here is my setup. Like I said, this was my first time and I did make some mistakes. So just be prepared for that and let's all learn together. I think that that's probably one of the best ways for anyone to learn is to dive in and learn from your mistakes, or in my case, you can learn from mine. So I've got my water bath canner set up there. I've got my lids, my rings, my jars. I've got a pot to make my syrups in, and then I've got my berries that have been washed and prepared. I have a bunch of blackberries and a bunch of blueberries. Blueberries are a personal favorite of mine. Blackberries, other people in my household love. And of course, I've got some white vinegar because you do need that to just kind of keep everything cleaned up a little bit. So I got all my jars into my water bath canner and I am going to boil them to sterilize them. I know for pressure canning, you do not have to do that, but for water bath canning, everything has to be sterile. So I'm using this ball cookbook here, this canning cookbook. I heard a lot of people say great things about it, so this is the one I went with. It does have recipes for different syrups you can use for fruits, from, you know, very little sugar to a whole lot of sugar. So I just picked the lightest one because I'm really not looking for these to be, you know, super sweet. I'm just looking to preserve them for future use with like baking or maybe pouring on top of some pancakes or waffles. So I went ahead and just got my pot of water on the stove and I added in the appropriate amount of sugar. And I questioned at this point if this was going to be enough syrup, and I told myself, oh, you'll be fine, which of course was inaccurate, and you'll see that later. So always think really long and hard about how many jars you're going to be filling so that you don't have to do what I'm going to do in a little bit and stop everything to make more of this syrup. I mean, it's not a difficult thing to make, but it certainly would have made my life a lot easier if I had thought it through a little bit more in the beginning. Because looking at it, there's absolutely no way this was going to fill the amount of jars I was going to do, but I didn't know that. And this is one of the things that I learned and I made a strong mental note about so that next time I don't make this mistake again. I mean, I'm sure I'll make it in some way, shape, form, or fashion, but I will be much better prepared. So once this was simmering, you can see the water gets completely clear, the sugar is completely dissolved, and we have ourselves a nice syrup here. I decided to add in this vanilla. I've seen people do it. I did check to make sure it's safe to add in vanilla. You don't have to do that, and that's not actually listed in the syrup recipe in the ball canning book. That's just something I did for me. So if you're going to add in other things, just make sure that they're safe to add for whatever you're canning. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, so I Googled every little thing that I did just to make sure that it was all safe. I know that there's Rebel canning out there.
I'm right now just trying to stick to best practices because I am new to this and I don't want to make any mistakes in the beginning. Once I learn more, maybe I'll change my point of view. Maybe I'll be into rebel canning. I really don't know. But as for right now, I'm just kind of following best practices to get myself going. So I went ahead and started by ladling a little bit of that nice hot syrup into the bottom of each one of my jars. I'm using pint jars. And again, I did not have quite enough jars ready, so I am having to sterilize some more. I realized this going in that I was not going to have quite enough ready, so I had a helper in the kitchen helping me sterilize some more while I'm getting these going. And then I just started going ahead to add my fruit to each one of the jars. These both can at the same time in the same way, so I'm doing these together, the blueberries and the blackberries, but do pay attention to what you're canning to make sure that it can, be canned at the same time in the same way. Some things have to be pressure canned, some things have to be water bath canned. These I just knew going in would can together. Also, I did check and it did say a 1/2 inch of headspace for each jar, so I'm doing my best to leave that 1/2 inch of headspace. I think I probably could have done a little bit better on that because I did have 1 or 2 jars that kind of seeped some of their syrup out into my water bath canner. So I think I did overfill them a little bit in the end, but I did check the seals and they are all fully sealed. Everything was great with them. So I am using my ladle to try to keep the rims of the jars clean. The idea here is that you don't want to get too much stuff around the rim because then it affects the seal, even though we're going to clean it off. I was just doing my best to not get things on that rim. So about this point, I was realizing, yeah, I'm definitely going to run shy on the syrup for these. And I did have to go ahead and make some more syrup. So like I said, definitely kind of pay more attention. The ball canning book, I will say, did kind of lead me astray because it made it sound like I was going to be able to make more jars with that amount of syrup than I was able to, and there just would have been absolutely no way. So I just made some more, and then this time I got a little smarter and put it into my measuring cup so I could pour it out because it has a pour spout. That was a lot easier than ladling it in. Just something I picked up, and I definitely recommend it because going back and forth with that ladle, I was dripping that syrup all over my counter, so I had to scrub all that sticky stuff off later, and I just really hate that. This was so much easier. And as you can see, I ran just a tiny bit shy, but it looked okay at the end. I added a tiny bit of water to the last 2 jars. And there I've got my vinegar, and I am just wiping off the rims. I know this is one of the key steps. You've got to wipe off the rims. Now, if you guys are professional canners, if you've been canning a lot in your life, I bet you've already caught a mistake that I've made here, and I caught it later. So at this point, I actually should have been making sure there were no air bubbles in these jars, but I completely forgot that step. I actually wiped down all the rims and I put on all of my lids and rings and I made them finger tight and put them inside of my water bath canner and put the lid on, and then realized, oh no, I forgot to get the air bubbles out. So I had to pull each jar out, take the lid off of each and every one, and then do the process all over again. But again, it was a learning curve for me, and I will not forget that next time because I had to do it this way. And I did go over each one with vinegar again to make sure that there was no sticky syrup or fruit stuck on the rims of the jars because I wanted good seals for everything. And I'm only doing my rings finger tight, which even after I had to take these back out and redo them, I did each one finger tight, just like that. I do know you don't want your rings to be too tight or the air bubbles can't seep out to push all of the air out of the can to make this, safe. So I was being as cautious as I could to follow all of the rules. I feel a little bit more comfortable now. I'm one of those people when I dive into a new project that I kind of go overboard with following the rules and being extra cautious, especially when food is involved, just for safety's sake. And then once I learn my way around a little bit, I do kind of get a little more free with it. You guys all know I'm not into measuring and things like that. I feel like cooking with your heart's the way to go. So I'm sure down the road I will be a lot less stringent about some of these things. Of course, I'll always want to get the air bubbles out and things like that, but I'm sure I won't be quite as stiff on the rules on double checking every single thing I add to each and every one of my jars before I can them. Now, like I said, I did get each and every one of these into my water bath canner at this point. I have my rack in the bottom. You never want to set your jars directly on the bottom of a metal pot. So if you don't have like a pot that says water bath canner when you buy it, you can use any large pot that will completely submerge your jars. If you don't have a rack to put on the bottom, there you go, you can see mine now. If you don't have a rack to put on the bottom, you can always just toss a dish towel into the bottom of it to keep the jars from bumping around, because as they cook and they boil, if they bump around on the bottom of that metal pot or against each other, then the jars can of course crack and break. I didn't have any break this time, which made me super happy because I was really nervous about that. And on my second load of jars that I did, because you'll see I can't fit all of my jars in here. On my second load, I did actually put a couple of empty jars and 2 dish towels in there because I didn't have quite enough jars to fill up the canner, and I didn't want them bumping around too much. So I did kind of just have to steady them with that. And I don't think I filmed it because it was much later. Bringing this up to a boil to get the jars in there takes a good amount of time. So I filmed this first round, and then it was probably about an hour and a half later before I was able to do the second round because I had to wait for the water to cool down enough to add the jars in so that the water wasn't too hot that the jars would explode. So it was kind of a lengthy process. I also have a pressure canner that I have not gotten the occasion to use yet. I really wanted to can some chicken just to give it a shot to see if my family actually likes that. But I was just really not feeling great this last week since we got home from our trip. My kids and I all had colds, so I did not get back to the store to get the chicken that was on sale to can it, so that's going to happen down the road. So here's about the point when I realized it. So I'm showing what I did for a jar of blueberries and a jar of blackberries. I started by just gently tapping them on my mat here because it does kind of help to push all of the air bubbles up from the bottom. Because I have a lot of pieces in there, like a bunch of different berries, there's a lot of places for air bubbles to get trapped. So I started by doing that, and then I gently took this little plastic stick thing that came with my canning set. I don't know what it's really called, but this is what you're supposed to use it for. And I went around the edges and I kind of moved everything around to release any of the air bubbles that were still in there. And I do have these berries packed in pretty well. I felt like I packed them in pretty tightly there, but I did go around and I made sure I did this until I didn't see any more air bubbles moving up to the top. I felt like I got them all out. I actually did this about 3 weeks ago, so I've got these sitting in my pantry and I've looked at them every time I've gone in there. They look beautiful. They look gorgeous. I have not opened them yet. I'm trying to let them sit for just a little while because it's the first thing I've ever canned, just to kind of keep an eye on them and see how things go. The seals are holding beautifully. Just everything turned out really well. I was really nervous going into this. This is something I've wanted to do for a while, but I just was very unsure of the whole process. But I gotta say, it went really well, even though I forgot some steps and had to kind of double back around. And you can see I am being really careful to bump out any air bubbles there. I was really afraid of like botulism and things like that. Probably overly concerned, but I think I'd rather be over than under at this point, and I'm sure I will get a lot more comfortable with the process as time goes on. And here's what these look like. Those blackberries, y'all, I think they're absolutely gorgeous. They look beautiful when they are in my pantry. I just love the way they look. They look delicious too. I cannot wait to dive in. That little hint of vanilla, these are going to be so good. I'm thinking about maybe crepes or pancakes. I don't know, maybe some homemade waffles and just dumping them over the top. It just sounds fantastic to me, and I can't wait to dive in. And I'm so glad that I now have this fresh fruit to hang out on my shelf year-round for me to use for lots of different options. So I'm super excited to continue with my adventures of canning. If you're interested in following me, continue to do so because I will continue to can more items and post videos of that journey here on my YouTube channel. If you have any suggestions of things to try next, let me know down below in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys on Saturday for my What's for Dinner. Bye.